Before we begin, I want to make it clear that these are not your typical horror stories. These are real experiences, shared by people who, just like you, thought they were safe behind their screens. But sometimes, the things we think are just glitches or tricks of the mind turn out to be something else. Tonight, you'll hear about strange occurrences from gamers who've had their worlds turned upside down, whether it's unsettling sounds, weird glitches, or moments that can't be explained by logic. These stories are chilling because they could happen to any of us. So, get comfortable and listen closely, because what you're about to hear may make you think twice the next time you fire up your favorite game. Let's get into it. My name is Aiden. I've always been a pretty hardcore gamer. When I was younger, I spent hours locked in my room, immersed in the worlds of RPGs, shooters, and strategy games. The thrill of progressing through levels and discovering hidden secrets always kept me coming back for more. It became second nature. I was so used to the occasional midnight gaming sessions that they didn't seem strange to me, even when the world outside grew quiet and the house settled into a deep silence. But there was one night, a few months ago, that has stuck with me in a way I can't shake. It wasn't the game that was disturbing, but the strange things that happened around me while I was playing. It started like any other evening. I had just finished a long day of work from home and was looking forward to winding down with a session of one of my favorite games, a single-player survival horror that had recently updated with a new expansion. The in-game atmosphere was intense. The sound design alone had me on edge. Every creak of wood and distant scream made me jump. I was playing in my usual spot, a small, dimly lit corner of my bedroom, the only light coming from my monitor. I was used to the isolated feeling, but that night, it felt different. The house felt quieter, too quiet, like the usual hum of life had been sucked out of it. My bedroom is on the second floor of the house, tucked away at the end of a long, narrow hallway. It's a small room, but it's cozy. There's a single window that looks out over the backyard. The house was built in the 1920s, so it has the kind of creaky floorboards and odd angles you'd expect from a house of its age. Normally, this gives the place character, but that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was somehow more aware of my presence. Like it was holding its breath. The game started to get under my skin more than usual. In it, you're isolated in a decaying mansion, searching for clues to unravel a mystery while trying to survive strange, otherworldly threats. But there was something about the way the game's environment flickered on and off, the way the lights in the game would suddenly cut out or the shadows would shift unnaturally, that left me feeling uneasy. I brushed it off as a clever trick by the developers. The game was designed to make you feel paranoid, and it was working. It was around 1:30 a.m. when things took a turn. I had just reached a part of the game where you have to descend into the basement of the mansion. The air felt heavier, the room darker. I wasn't thinking much of it, just focused on the screen, trying to figure out the puzzle in front of me. Then, out of nowhere, I heard it. A soft creak, like the sound of a floorboard shifting. It was faint, but it came from the hallway outside my door. At first, I figured it was just the house settling. Old houses have a way of doing that, right? I ignored it and kept playing. But then, the sound came again. A distinct creak, like someone was walking outside my room. It was too rhythmic to be the house settling. Too deliberate. I paused the game and sat completely still, listening. The sound stopped. My eyes darted to the door, which was slightly ajar. I could see nothing beyond it, just the faint outline of the hallway light from outside. I tried to convince myself that it was nothing, that it was just my imagination running wild. Maybe I was just spooked by the game, after all. But then I heard something else, a low, indistinct murmur. It wasn't clear enough to make out words, but it was the unmistakable sound of someone whispering. My heart rate picked up. I froze, unsure whether to check or just ignore it. I wasn't the type to jump to conclusions, but this wasn't like anything I'd experienced before. The whispering wasn't coming from the game either, it was coming from outside the room. I slowly got up from my chair and moved toward the door, keeping my steps light. I pressed my ear to the door, trying to hear more clearly. The whispering continued, soft and muffled, as if someone were standing at the end of the hallway, just out of sight. I opened the door cautiously, peering out into the dark hallway. The light from the hallway seemed strangely dim, casting long shadows along the walls. No one was there. I stepped into the hallway, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. There was nothing unusual, no sudden cold drafts, no signs of anyone being there. I checked both ends of the hallway. The bathroom light at the far end flickered, but that was normal. The house had a way of doing that. I walked slowly back to my room and closed the door behind me, but the strange feeling lingered. I sat back down, trying to shake off the unease. It was probably just the late hour messing with my head, I told myself. Maybe I was just overthinking things. I resumed the game. This time, the game seemed to take on a life of its own. The flickering of lights inside the game became more pronounced. The sounds were no longer subtle, they were deafening, ringing in my ears. My character's footsteps echoed unnaturally, even when standing still. The game's atmosphere was dark and suffocating, but now, it felt too real. And then, the real nightmare started. The whispering came back. But this time, it wasn't just in the hallway, it was in my room, faint but unmistakable. It was like someone was standing right behind me, whispering directly into my ear. I whipped around in my chair, but there was nothing there. My breath caught in my throat. I had to get up. I had to stop playing. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. My eyes were fixed on the screen, even though the discomfort was growing unbearable. The game itself felt alive now, almost like it was pushing me to stay. I tried to exit, to shut it down, but the menu wouldn't load. The screen just stayed frozen on an image of my character, standing in a dark hallway, staring back at me. The whispering grew louder, more urgent. It was clearer now. "Help me," it repeated, over and over. My skin was crawling. I didn't know what was real anymore, the game, or the house, or whatever was watching me. I don't remember exactly how long I sat there, frozen in place. It felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than a few minutes. Eventually, I managed to shut off the computer. The whispering stopped. The room returned to its usual quiet. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every creak in the house, every slight shift of the air, had me on edge. The feeling didn't go away. For the next few nights, I kept the lights on, but the strange sensations didn't subside. I started hearing the whispering even when I wasn't playing. At random times, like it was embedded in the walls themselves. I've stopped playing that game altogether. I don't even like to go near my computer anymore, not without a sense of dread creeping up my spine. I don't know what happened that night, but I'm not the same since. Something about that experience, the way reality and the game blurred together, shook me to my core. And to this day, I still can't explain it. All I know is that I don't want to find out what else might be lurking, waiting to speak through the screen again. I haven't heard the whispers in a while, but every now and then, I catch myself glancing nervously at the door when I'm alone in the dark. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to forget it. Story 2. My name is Robert. It was a quiet Saturday night, the kind where you just want to relax and forget the week's stress. I decided to boot up my gaming console and dive into a new survival horror game that had been trending for weeks. The game had this eerie atmosphere, a mix of unsettling sounds and visuals that were designed to keep you on edge. Little did I know, it wouldn't just be the game that left me unnerved that night. I had my headphones on, the lights dimmed, and a cold drink beside me. As I ventured deeper into the game, I reached a point where my character entered an abandoned house. The floorboards creaked, the wind howled through broken windows, and the faint sound of whispers echoed in the distance. It was immersive, to say the least. But then, something caught my attention, something that wasn't coming from the game. It was subtle at first, like a faint tapping sound, almost like someone lightly knocking on a window. I paused the game, pulled off my headphones, and listened. The sound was gone. Shrugging it off as my imagination, I resumed playing. As the game got more intense, so did the real-life interruptions. The tapping came back, this time louder, more deliberate. I paused again, feeling a slight unease creep over me. My gaming setup was in the living room, and the only window there faced my backyard. I peeked through the blinds but saw nothing. It was pitch black outside, except for the faint glow of my porch light. Trying to shake off the weird vibe, I returned to the game, but now I couldn't focus. Every little noise in the house felt amplified. Suddenly, as I turned a corner in the game, my screen flickered. Not just a regular game glitch, it was as if my TV was losing connection. A static sound burst through my headphones, and the game froze. Then I heard it, clear as day. A voice. It wasn't coming from the game. It was low, almost like a whisper, and it said, "Do you see me now?" My heart dropped. The voice seemed to come from right behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. My chest tightened as I tried to rationalize what had just happened. Maybe it was an audio bug from the game? Maybe I was just imagining it. I decided to turn off the console. As I reached for the power button, my TV screen went completely black, and for a split second, I saw a reflection. It wasn't mine. It was a dark figure standing behind me. I froze. Slowly, I turned around, expecting, hoping, to see nothing. The room was empty. My breathing was shallow, my hands trembling as I unplugged the console and the TV. I didn't sleep that night. I left every light in the house on and kept checking the locks on my doors and windows. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, that I had let the game's atmosphere mess with me. But here's the thing, I haven't touched that game since. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is silent, I swear I can still hear faint tapping on the windows. Story 3. My name is Jackson. I've always been a competitive gamer. Late night sessions with my friends, pushing for high ranks, and trying new games, it's my favorite way to unwind. One night, I decided to play an online horror game that a friend had recommended. It was multiplayer, and the premise was simple: escape a haunted asylum before the entity catches you. The game had an eerie atmosphere, and the sound design was incredible: distant screams, echoing footsteps, and whispers that seemed to crawl under your skin. I was playing with my usual group of friends, chatting through a headset, when something strange happened. We were in the middle of a tense match, sneaking through dark hallways in-game, when I heard a faint knock. It wasn't from the game, it was real, coming from somewhere in my apartment. I live alone, so that immediately set me on edge. I muted my mic and paused to listen. The knocking stopped. It could have been something outside, maybe the wind. I shook it off and told myself to focus on the game. About 10 minutes later, as we were about to finish the match, I heard it again, this time louder, like it was right outside my bedroom door. My heart started racing. The only problem was that my bedroom door was closed and locked. I asked my friends on the mic if they heard anything weird through my headset, but they said no. One of them joked that the game was getting to me, and I laughed it off, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. The match ended, and we started another. This time, something felt off right from the beginning. As I moved my character down a hallway, I noticed something odd. There was an extra shadow in the game. It didn't belong to my character or my teammates. It was standing still at the end of the hall, just out of reach of my flashlight. "Guys, do you see that?" I asked. "What are you talking about?" one of them replied. "The shadow at the end of the hallway," I said, but when I looked again, it was gone. They thought I was messing with them, but I swear it was there. I tried to push through, thinking maybe it was a glitch, but then my screen froze for a split second, and the game seemed to lag. When the screen came back, the shadow was closer. This time, it was unmistakable, a tall, dark figure with no face. It wasn't part of the game. My friends couldn't see it, and that's when I realized something was very wrong. I turned off the game and sat there in silence, staring at my screen. Then, I heard it again, the knocking. But this time, it wasn't just knocking. It was followed by a low, raspy whisper, "Why did you stop?" I froze. My headphones were still on, but the game was closed. That voice wasn't coming from the headset, it was inside the room. I jumped up and turned on every light in my apartment. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I deleted the game and haven't touched it since. Sometimes, when I'm sitting at my desk late at night, I feel like I'm being watched. And every now and then, I swear I hear faint knocking, like it's waiting for me to play again. It's easy to dismiss these things as coincidence or imagination, but when multiple people experience something unexplainable, it's hard to ignore. Whether it's strange sounds, glitches that go beyond the screen, or just an unsettling feeling that won't leave you, one thing's for sure, sometimes, the line between the virtual world and reality is a lot thinner than we'd like to think. Thanks for listening, and remember, the next time you settle in for a late-night gaming session, you might not be alone. Stay safe, and keep your eyes peeled, because some things are better left unexplained. Until next time.